Hello, 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 hello. It's good to see you. Say hello.
Welcome to the Huskies Hockey Podcast. Welby and Andrew here, sitting here for our May podcast and our kind of recap of the transfer portal as that closes. And we're going to just go ahead and speculate on a bunch of people who we've never seen before. And I'm going to go ahead and throw in some hot takes as well about the next Grace Delmonico. The next person I'm going to hype up and maybe only get about 4 games of action. So look forward to seeing who that's going to be at the end. But I'm really excited here to be joined this podcast here by Sydney Wolf. Thank you so much for joining us and lending, what is going to be about 30 minutes to 3 hours of your time for this show. Thank you so much for joining us.
For sure. Always glad to talk Huskies hockey and all hockey in general.
Your resources that you put out for Clean Sheet Hockey has been very valuable for Andrew and myself as we were clinging on to everything transfer portal related and trying to make heads or tails of it. So thank you for your dedication and trying to keep that up to date because that seemed like a terrible task.
But yeah, I'm glad people use it and enjoy it because I can see how many people click on it, but I don't know if it's that useful. So sometimes it's good to hear that people actually use that. So, because yeah, that was definitely a long task, especially the women's recruits. Took a lot of Instagram digging, a lot of profile searching. So
much appreciated. I did the bulk of my research today through Clean Sheet Hockey.
Nice.
So I like the spreadsheet format. It's nice and clean, accessible, user friendly. Much appreciated.
Big into the Google Sheets.
Correct.
5 stars. First off, Instagram sleuthing, I never would have thought about that. And maybe that's my, millennial take of it. I would imagine for my generation, that would be who's in your top 8. And then all of a sudden, your next team is in your top 8. But how did you kind of come across that? What were your thoughts about that? Or is that just something that you've always been doing when looking at recruits or what?
Well, I've always looked at it. I haven't posted it necessarily, but I started doing that this year. And obviously sometimes with the really big recruits, whenever the recruitment period opens, people are always like, oh, well, this guy just followed BU on Instagram. And that's always an interesting part of it to see who's going to go where. I feel like that's bigger with other sports though, like basketball or football. They'll be like, well, this guy just followed Auburn on social media. Must mean he's going there or got an offer. So just thought I would do it for hockey. And it's kind of interesting sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't mean anything, but I'd say 80 to 90% of them have been pretty spot on this year. Which is kind of funny because some people gave me crap for doing that. I'm like, well, it's public information. They have a public account, so I can see who they're following. And if it's these 5 teams, I can bet you that they're probably going to one of them. So a lot of them have been pretty accurate. So I don't have it for everybody, but I thought it was pretty easy to just post it. And people thought it was some revolutionary thing, and it's really not. But I thought it was interesting and easy way to post content, and just a lot of people aren't on Instagram, so I was just and I'm not really either. I don't really I have a personal account, but I never use it. I just use it to look at stuff, so why not? And it's been kind of telling, so might as well keep doing it.
Yeah, sure thing. Well, it worked out because it felt like you were spot on most of the time, but it was really interesting to see how many of them also was followed 3 different teams, and it was kind of interesting to see what type of team, and sometimes there was just one curveball always kind of thrown in there.
Yeah, for sure.
But it was pretty cool. Now when you go through the whole portal process. You're looking into it, like basically information in general. Like, how do you try to scramble and find the information? Or, I know in the past I've took a clip out of context with you about how you lurk on many different sites.
Oh, it's so funny.
So is that still kind of the same process? I imagine it's like a big nether world of
yes and no. That first year, absolutely, I was just lurking because I didn't know anybody that first year. I was just doing it for fun. But now I actually feel like I know some people, so I have more help than just trying to rely off everybody else all the time. But it's kind of nice now that I've made, obviously, connections and stuff. And you'll have a lot of, I'll just say, like, I can't name specifics, but coaches and advisors that will text you or DM me, or I've had a couple of people message me on my personal Facebook, which is interesting, and be like, hey, I'm entering the portal. Sometimes players themselves, will you add me? Or coaches or advisors, agents, whatever you want to call them, of going, hey, this guy's entering the portal now, so it'll probably show up in 24 hours, just so you know. Or coaches saying, hey, we've added this guy and he doesn't have social media. Can you tweet it out for us? So sometimes it's just kind of who you have connections with, because sometimes people want to say stuff, but they also don't really want it to be from them. So a little mix of being online and Instagram investigating, as I call it, but also just kind of knowing people. And sometimes they'll give you little tidbits, or like, hey, watch tomorrow, this guy will commit somewhere. Maybe they won't tell me where, but they'll go, hey, keep an eye out for an announcement soon or something. And then I'll just turn notifications on or something like that.
Now, it's really interesting that, like coaches and advisors as well. Now, if you were to have kind of a gut feeling, because right now I think the perception of the portal is players are just looking to hop on to better teams, better opportunities all the time. Yeah. I have always been more of it's probably closer to 50-50 about coaches also saying, hey, we're not going to have room for you, or, maybe try your luck somewhere else, or can put in a good word somewhere else. If you were to guess what percentage of it is player driven versus coaches driven, do you have kind of a rough estimate? Would you guess kind of where that would be?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say like a number off the top of my head, but every year when I do like the portal analysis, everybody always thinks it's players that want to go somewhere bigger. But honestly, most of it I feel like is players that didn't have great scenarios the year before. So maybe some of them are bigger names, but a lot of times it's guys who didn't have great seasons and are either looking to just switch it up because they didn't either get the ice time they wanted or something like that, or they just didn't do great and need to like kind of bump down or go to D3 or U Sports, or there's a lot of that. So I feel like there's honestly not that many that are like those huge names, where obviously there are some, but a lot of times it's like that's not really the majority. A lot of times it's more other situations of guys who want more playing time somewhere else or might bump down, because usually there's a lot of like D1 to D3, especially in the women's portal. There's a lot of that, or going to play like Canadian college, which is U Sports. So a lot of that happens for sure.
Because I feel like kind of the narrative that's out there right now is, with the nil money floating out, that it's all the Big Ten schools that are just kind of gobbling everyone up. In those regards, and I feel like that's not happening near as much as people make it out.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, some schools might have some money they're giving to players, but like, I think some people think there's NIL money at every single school. Like, I'll post a transfer portal tidbit, and they'll be like, "Was this NIL?" And I'll be like, "That player had 2 points last year. They're not getting like 50 grand NIL money. Like, definitely not." I'd say majority of players are definitely not probably seeing really anything of that, unless they're like popular social media wise or something, like an influencer. But it's nowhere near like college basketball or football or something like that. Some people I think it is, and there's definitely some money, but most players are not like the first round draft picks that are more household type names.
Yeah, that's where college hockey, I think, is in that kind of unique scenario. more so than those, bigger college sports.
Yeah.
Now overall, let's talk about Huskies hockey. Where should we start, Andrew? Should we start the men or the women?
How about I got my sheet, my several sheets of notes, and the top sheet I have right now.
Your full yellow legal pad there. You're going old school with it.
Scribbling. The top sheet I have is the women's side. So let's start with that. So
all right,
it saves me a second from going to the next sheet over. But doing the rough calculations, I started with who's gone. And it's quickly apparent that there's a lot of turnover from this year to next year. And this is going to be a much younger team this coming year. I think, losing graduate players, seniors like Gentry, Ross, might have been your two best players right there. The transfers that you brought in last year, Promisberger and Parent and Qualley, they were all grad players. The transfers you brought in this year, one has 1 year of eligibility remaining, but the other two have 2 more years remaining. So there's a lot of open spots on this year's roster in terms of having to replace last year's both forwards and defense. Goaltending as well. Ahola leaves. We're getting Chobak back, we think. We've got 4 goaltenders in-house, which is a little surprising at this
Bizarre.
point.
Yeah.
What I've got is, if we're counting Chobak as an addition from last year's team, because technically she wasn't on roster last year, I've got 14 players that are slated to come on in. And it's a little bit trickier to gauge among the recruits who is actually going to land. Sydney's talking earlier or before the show in the green room, so to speak, kind of giving me her insight as far as when these players actually sign. Those Instagrams, the sleuthing on Instagram is a good hint, because they'll post out when they actually did sign and when they're expected to arrive on campus. So there's a lot of names here. I don't know do we want to go position by position? That might be a good way to organize things so we don't go super crazy. I teased it. How about let's talk about this goaltender situation, because we were expecting Kariko obviously to return after a very strong freshman year. Chobak, we know how good she is, coming back for what will be her 6th year asterisk. And
super asterisks. I think that's a
couple of asterisks, I think.
Yeah.
Yes. Paige Hukendam, who I don't believe has gotten into an actual game. She got action in the 2 exhibition games last year. I don't believe she's cracked the lineup in a game that counted yet. She was sort of odds on, or the de facto third goaltender on roster. But then lo and behold, we do hear a couple of weeks ago that they're bringing in a 4th goaltender through the portal, Haley Lawrence from Post in the Newha, who's got 1 year left of eligibility. Her numbers at Post in very limited time, not very good. Goals against, I had to do the math here to compute the 3 years that she did at Post. 485 goals against, 862 save. Post, obviously not a very good team in the lowest league in D1 NCAA. So the fact that we're adding a 4th goaltender to begin with is a little weird. It gives me a little bit of apprehension that Chobak, is she actually coming in? Like, I don't know why we would need a 4th goaltender. What was your initial reaction when you saw that Lawrence news? Because did you have a 4th goaltender on your bingo card for someone that St. Cloud is going to bring in?
Yeah, I definitely didn't. I saw that and was like, oh, I wasn't expecting there to be any more ads. But all right, very interesting. And I'm assuming Chobak is coming back, and then they would probably do the same split they did this year, just without Ahola, I would assume, kind of like a similar thing. And then I thought Hukendam would just be the, 3rd, like I'm sure we all were thinking. So I don't know, maybe if there's an injury or something. I'd assume not to one of the main goalies, because then, obviously no shade to Lawrence, but I would assume they would have gone out and gotten like a bigger name if they needed more of like a starter of a goaltender, because I don't really think she, I haven't really watched Post very much, and take the stats with a grain of salt because Post has been kind of a hot mess recently. But I don't really think she's going to be somebody that's going to get ice time over the goalies they have. So I don't know if maybe they're like, well, yeah, you can come in. You're probably not going to get playing time, but you can obviously be on the team and be a goalie here. But yeah, I'm not really sure what's going on with that. I was definitely surprised to see that announcement when I saw it.
And no word about Hugendam either. Like I was kind of
she
reminded
didn't enter
of
the portal, so
right. I was thinking last year when St. Cloud, the men's side, brought in, what was his name, Glockner? I think he was from Michigan Tech or Northern Michigan, one of the UP schools, as their third goaltender, and then he, I think, just decided to kind of give up hockey. So that's how they brought in Enright.
If Hugendam was like entering the portal or something, I'd get it, but I don't know, maybe there's an injury or something, but I haven't heard that, so yeah, I don't know, maybe strange. They're just adding a fourth to have a fourth, but little odd.
Yeah, I guess it's never a bad idea to have depth, but if we're at a situation where we're cracking into the fourth goaltender on roster, whoever that is, either Hugendam or Lawrence, probably not going to be a good sign.
Yeah, that means the season has kind of gone a little bit pear-shaped.
Yeah.
So. I mean, it's of the forwards we know the last couple of years, the Idalski era, great improvement overall as a program, but the offense has been the lagging unit. Defense, a lot of turnover for this coming year. Losing players like Ross is going to be a big hole to fill. But goaltending is kind of the one sure thing. We really haven't had to worry about goaltending over the last couple of years. And so now with a 4-person unit, I guess that's a curveball that I wasn't anticipating. Those other 2 units, though, defense and forwards, I guess we'll start with defense. As I mentioned, Ross, stalwart of that unit. Also Taylor Larson, Ella Anik. They all graduate, and then losing Carmen Bray through the portal goes to Bemidji. Am I correct on that, Sydney?
Yeah, so I believe they already signed that or posted it.
Yeah. So that's she'll be staying in conference, and so you got 4 players there that. Pretty much every game players last year's defensive core. Returnees, we've got Reagan Bulger, Siri Urela, who really came on, I thought, in the second half of the season. And then we think Grace Wolf, correct? With her getting a red shirt for being injured, not this last year, but 2 years ago. That was a question that Weldy and I had that I thought Mick Hatton had cleared this up in an article at the end of 2024 that she does have an extra year left. Gotcha. So if I'm assuming correctly, Wolf, a big returner on that defensive core. Sydney Bryant also, she played some forward at times last year as well, mostly played defense, but she was 18 games played last year. Might get some more action this year again with the 4 players from last year moving on. So that's what we've got as returning players. And then we've got some commits that are coming in. I would say, let's start with Sydney Lamb. I was going to say Sydney Wolf, but it's a different animal with last name.
Yeah. When I talked to her a couple months ago, and I thought it was funny that it was Sydney Wolf writing about Sydney Lamb. But
it was a bit of an opposite kind of Wolf and Lamb. I can see that opposites attract maybe. But good article, by the way, on cleansheethockey.com. If you want some quotes from Sydney Lamb, I would say she headlines this recruiting class from the defensive standpoint, perhaps overall. Again, there's some candidates on the offensive side as well, but Lamb, the only one of these recruits to have national team experience playing in the U18s. And if you look on like Team USA's roster, or the U18 roster, the graduates, or alumni, let's say from those U18 teams, the programs that those players typically go to. It's a lot of Wisconsin, a lot of Ohio State, a lot of Minnesota. This is the only St. Cloud connection among those players, but it's good to be in that mix for players like that. I think it's a coup recruiting wise for Dulski to land Lamb. Chicago area recruit, that will become a theme as we go through these players. It seemed like an area where Adulski has staked his claim here, and playing in the let's say the AAA. Again, we were discussing this before the show too, and you can elaborate on this as well, Sydney, as far as the differences between men's junior hockey and then how the junior quasi high school gap year. You can maybe expand on that as well. But Sydney Lamb, let's say, best defensive prospect among this group. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, she's definitely one of the top ones. Making that USA U18s is tough. But some of the other players on this list, like we were talking pre-show, they're kind of being recruited from all over. So I can't say I've watched a whole lot of like Quebec hockey necessarily. So I don't really know a whole lot about, for example, like Meili Pion. I don't know if I'm saying her name right. I do not know French. I'm very
That's
sorry.
how I was going to go with it. So you did as good as I did.
But like, I can't say I know much about her. And I know Sydney Lamb knows some of the other Illinois girls like Aruba Skiston. But again, I don't know a ton about her. I'm hoping maybe I can write something about her this summer so I can find out some more about her. But same then with another Canadian, with Hannah Marks Arnold. Again, I don't really know a ton about St. Mary's Academy Prep, I believe is where she's been playing. So can't say I've watched a ton of those. I know a decent amount of AAA in America and obviously the Minnesota high school scene, but some of the Canadian ones, a little hard to find info on if you're just, somebody that's not living up there for women's.
Yeah, difficult to come by like stat lines for players like Lamb and Skiston, as you mentioned, Reese Strouts, who played with Sydney Lamb at Windy City with AAA team. She's also coming in on the forward side. We can maybe touch on her in a little bit. But in terms of just the pedigree of where Lamb's been selected to play on some teams, like representing the United States, for instance, it makes me excited that she's going to be not just a player who's going to come in and get a shot. Like, she's going to perhaps be on a power play unit sooner rather than later, those kind of things. Again, it's hard to gauge in terms of, is this more of a defensive defender, or there's an offensive spark to the game as well. We don't even have stats to go by. We do on the men's side, but we don't have that with the stats available to us with the women's AAA quasi junior situation. So disappointing to not be able to have more to go on there. But from what we're seeing with Lamb, there's a lot to like there. The other, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's kind of cool because like all the Illinois people you were kind of saying, like she plays with Reese Strouts now, so they're already very familiar with each other. And she told me too that she used to be D partners with Aruba Skiston when they were younger. And I think it was for Team Illinois or something a couple of years ago, but they've actually been D partners before. So that might be kind of interesting to see if they end up like playing it all together. I don't know, but she might, I could see Lamb being paired up with, more of a experienced player, but they already have a little bit of that kind of experience playing together and stuff, which is cool and maybe something to watch out for.
Well, and with only a couple of players returning on defense in general, you're going to have somebody whose pairing is going to be young. So having a little bit of that chemistry might work out for them. Quickly, saying that you're hoping to, write some more profiles coming up. Like, do you just you got like a phone bank of numbers there? Do you just reach out on Instagram? Do you?
It's a little tough.
She got the Glengarry leads. Come on.
Yeah, it's a little tough on the women's side because sometimes I gotta like see if I can find a coach's number, and a lot of times they don't respond, or especially because sometimes there's like one team email, and sometimes nobody responds to those. So at least on the men's side, they have advisors most of the time I can try to reach out to, which those aren't always perfect either. But a lot of women's players don't have advisors, like some of them do. But a lot of times it's like, hey, I think this is a parent email. Will your kid talk to me, please? So I can write something about them. Only good things, I promise. So sometimes it's trying to find an email and hoping they see it.
Just find something that works. Sure
Yeah,
enough.
it's be a little tough on the women's side. There's not much info on a lot of it. So, yeah.
Yeah, as far as those other incoming freshmen on the blue line, you mentioned Aruba Skiston, played with the Chicago Mission, which is in the same league as Windy City. And I was looking at like the rankings for the teams. Chicago, the Mission is the better of the two teams, although they're both highly regarded teams. They rank well in that level of hockey. She's coming in. You mentioned Hannah Marks Arnold, Winnipeg native, basically Canadian high school. I mean, that's the other difference between women's hockey and men's hockey. Like Lamb, she's still 17. She'll turn 18 in June. Marks Arnold's turning 18 in June. Skiston, also 18 in the summer. I mean, so we're talking about 18-year-olds fresh on campus this fall for the majority of these women's recruits, whereas getting an 18-year-old on the men's side these days, it's kind of a rarity. But definitely a younger side of the game in general, women's hockey. And this year, again, like I said, coming off of the last couple of years where there's been a lot of seniors, a lot of upperclassmen, and a lot of grad students, it's going to be a bit different this year because it's going to be relatively skimpy on upper class players for the Huskies. You're going to have to get a lot of contributions from young players this year. And so I wanted to mention, Skiston, Marks Arnold, that Reese Strauss, who's listed as a forward, I think it was in the Adolski interview, mentioned that she's also played some D as well, and a player that, as you mentioned, played with Lamb. And then there was that Maylee Pion, the Canadian, who we hope we're pronouncing that somewhat correctly.
Yeah.
Pion.
Couple of these, it could be the silent N. I saw as the last letter. You kind of
no idea.
Trail off before you end the actual letter. But Pion actually looks like a pretty decent prospect as well. 5'11". I think she's the tallest of the players that they've brought in. Just kind of digging into Canadian women's prep / juniors. Like there's different levels of leagues, and it's difficult to gauge in terms of the quality of these leagues. But the JWHL, apparently, which is a decently respected league. Like there was a forward, Julianne Labe, who comes from a Quebec league that's more obscure, that is now just kind of starting to emerge as a viable feeder to NCAA, whereas the JWHL has more experience with players coming to NCAA. Pion looks like a pretty decent prospect, I think. More offensive. She's got 18 points. She had 18 points in 28 games in her last season, the U19s at the JWHL level. So I'd assume that she's going to get a fair crack. I mean, so if we had the 4 returning players, Bulger, Wolf, Urela, and Bryant, who again, kind of a hybrid player, but we're bringing in the numbers that we're bringing in, Pion, Lamb, Skiston, and Marks Arnold. That's 4 additions to the defense. So that brings us to 8 on the back end, which is a good number to have. Usually you dress 6, maybe a 7th is either an extra forward or an extra defender. So you think that that's a good number to have. What do you think as far as of the 4? And again, we're going on a bit of vibes here because the data that we get is limited on these players. But as far as of the 4 that we've mentioned that are going to be newcomers to the Huskies this fall, like as far as we're pretty much in agreement, it sounds like that Lamb is the top of that class. Where do you think, like, of the 4 that we've mentioned, which are the ones that we're thinking are regulars on the defensive core throughout the bulk of the season next year?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's kind of hard to say just because we'll have to see kind of how quickly they adapt and if they're able to, play better than some of those returning players that have that experience, especially just because I haven't watched a ton of these players since we don't really have Minnesotan D recruits coming in, since, I've seen a good chunk of the forwards and some of the other players like Peyton Holloway, who's transferring in. I talked to her like 2 years ago or so, which is crazy to think she's transferring in now. But yeah, I don't know. I'd assume it's Sydney Lamb just because she's had, when I wrote about her, she had kind of like a quick rise to being a higher level prospect. And I think she said that sort of drives her to be better. Like a couple years ago, she was kind of a relatively unknown prospect, and then all of a sudden she started making these camps and then made the USA U18s, and all of a sudden just her trajectory really just took off all of a sudden. So that'll be cool to see if she can kind of keep up with that, and then all of a sudden have like a even more kind of crazy rise up into college hockey would be awesome to see. But I really don't know. I honestly don't know a ton about this D-core, and it'll kind of just depend on if they can come in and outplay the other girls for a spot, but I'm not really sure if they'll be able to or not right away. And I wouldn't be surprised maybe if there's some early kind of rotation too with some of the new players and see how they do.
Even split as far as my research goes in terms of lefty shots versus righty shots, which isn't like the be all and end all of your defenders, but you like to have a decent split.
I love me a right-handed D, so
Wolf, Marks Arnold, Bryant, and Lamb all righty shots. Vulture, Urela, Pion, and Skiston all lefty shots. Again, according to the internet, which never lets anybody down. But those are what's looking like a defensive core that, we know what we get with Wolf. Like I said, Urela, I thought really took a step up in the second half. I could see her getting some power play action because of the time that she got on the unit last year. Bulger's been a player that has shown some spurts, but it's kind of been consistent. I would imagine Bulger and Wolf probably be your number one pair going into maybe to start the season, because they have the most experience of the defensive core. But with the talent that we think that we're getting with the young players coming in, I think, like you said, it's going to be an open competition, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how these positional battles shuffle out. But certainly with the goaltending, the strength in goaltending that we think we have, we could build out from that. As far as, I think defense is going to be less of a question mark than offense, just because offense has been the biggest question mark. It's been the one lagging unit the last couple of years that's cost you taking that next step up and making an NCAA tournament appearance. So I guess we can talk about those forwards.
Yeah. I mean, to quote Adelsky, for the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, but we got to score.
Yep, that's pretty much it.
Let's hope we don't get too much mileage out of that sounder this year. That would be a good thing. That would be ideal. So. But again, sort of the same with the defense. I mean, we're losing a lot of numbers from last year. Gentry, probably the biggest loss among the forwards. Avery Myers, Promisberger, Parent, mentioned, and Qualley, all grad players. They were never going to come back. And Greta Henderson, who left via the portal to Boston University, according to Clean Sheet. And it does seem like Delmonico has not found a spot yet. Is that right?
Well, according to Instagram investigating, when you guys were just talking about that, this isn't official, but the only team she's following right now is Hamlin, so I'm assuming she's going D3.
Oh.
So if that ends up being true,
I'm going to put that in pen
on the show.
I'm going to take your word for it. I
but it looks like she's following a couple Hamlin accounts, so I wouldn't be surprised if she's going there.
Oh. Sure enough. Well, best of luck to her. Hashtag free Delmonico.
Not confirmed.
She'll be free.
Since she's following them, I'm assuming that's a probable destination.
Yep. Sure enough.
Probably a good hint. So then, as far as,
I'm surprised we don't have a breaking news sounder. I thought I had one.
Yeah, because the only team she's following, hockey teams, are Hamlin and Gentry, where she played high school. So
sure.
Probably Hamlin.
Okay.
Tidbit for the show.
There we go.
We appreciate scoops. We're big about scoops here because we never make them. We're not that kind of show. We react. We don't break
Yeah.
news. We react to news. But as far as your returners among the forwards, I mean, Sorial and Sunderland, who really clicked towards the end of last year. Sunderland centering usually with a line. It didn't start that way. Beginning of the year was the Sunderland, Zimmerman, Henderson line, which was clicking for the first couple of weeks. But then that kind of trailed off. Sunderland and Sorial feel like is going to be a pairing between whoever plays with them. You feel like you want to keep those two together at least to start the season. Avery Farrell, who I suppose is the elder statesman now, and then Laura Zimmerman is coming back as well. Svenja Vogt and Marie Moran, both sort of fourth line players, didn't get every game action last year. Probably in line to get some more action this year. So that's 2, 4, 6 of the 12 coming back. So you got to rebuild half of your offensive core. And again, it's an offensive core that struggled last year. So there's opportunities for the taking for any of these new players new players via recruit or the transfer portal. Now, we did talk the last show about Sydney Jackal, who they brought in from Lindenwood. So you can go back to last show. If Sydney Wolf, again, talking another Sydney here in the fold.
Yeah.
It's getting a little confusing. And Jackal is another animal.
Also an animal. I guess
it's
it's
getting weird.
St. Cloud State must just attract a lot of Sydneys with animal last names, I guess. I don't.
Now, do you
really
look
weird.
when you're looking at Sydney Jackal? Do you look at the spelling of Sydney and think that's the wrong way to spell?
Yeah, obviously, but I mean,
For being
It's still
real,
a good name,
Jackal is
but-
not spelled the same way that the animal is, but
I guess
it's
yeah,
good enough for the
it's
bit.
same thing. Yeah.
We can turn a blind eye to that, but
Yeah, my wife's name's Teresa without an H because she likes to
Okay.
say my name's not Theresa.
Alt spelling.
so it's
So-
SID for Sydney Jackal.
SYD for the real, the actual,
For
real
the-
stuff.
for the other
the
ones.
quote unquote real.
So if you want to rewind or go back to last show, you can talk 10 minutes on Sydney Jackal. If you have anything to add on that, I'd be happy to hear it. But talked about her. She's coming in, centering experience. If you do know more about this, because as I was trying to sleuth her action at Lindenwood, 20-ish points over 2 years there with the Lions, and it looked like she got some time at center, most of the time on the wing, right-handed shot. But I mean, she's gonna play. She'll be a regular. Peyton Holloway, who you mentioned, who they got out of the portal from Duluth, just 3 points in 2 years at UMD, Wisconsin product, and 2 more years left. So she'll come in as a junior this year, and she just turned 21 herself. So those are the 2 forwards that the Huskies got out of the portal. I guess let's start with them, just because those are the non-young recruits. These are acquisitions from teams they already have NCAA experience. Just because of that, by dint of the fact that they have experience at this level, whereas we're talking about all these 18-year-olds, not even 18 yet. They'll be 18, in a couple of months. The fact that you have some veteran players, some experience, you figure that's going to bode well. At least to start the season, they're going to get a fair chunk of ice time and some good opportunities to crack the lineup. What's your take on Holloway and Jackal in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know as much about Jackal. If you guys did a lot of content on her the last show, I'm assuming she's going to be regularly in the lineup. I don't think she's going to be like insane or anything just based off of her prior points she got, but obviously that was at Lindenwood. So again, take that with a grain of salt, because Lindenwood obviously also hasn't been super, a powerhouse recently or anything, but I'd assume she'll be, a regular in the lineup. And Peyton Holloway, I talked to like when she committed to UMD, so not recently, but she played for Shattuck, and it wasn't their prep team. I think she was playing for their 19U team, which is a different team,
Right.
But I think she led that team in points that year. So I think she's one of those players that just kind of got, buried in the lineup a little bit at Duluth, and I'm kind of curious to see what she'll do if she's able to get a little bit more of an elevated position. So I'm not saying she will be like super good, but I think there is potential there maybe for like if she gets a little bit more playing time, because she has been a good scorer in the past for Shattuck, and obviously Shattuck players tend to be pretty good because they play good competition. So I'll be interested to see what she can kind of bring to the table as a forward. And some of the other forward recruits, I'm kind of excited. Some of them I really don't know a whole lot about, but just looking them up, I'm a little more excited. And I'm just hoping we can add some scoring, because I think that's the one thing we need a lot more of is scoring, whether that's from the D or the forwards or everybody, just scoring. Hopefully more of that.
Yeah, so let's get to those incoming freshmen. The two that I'm probably the most there was a couple. I mean, it's interesting. We're talking about the Chicago group, the Chicago trio with Lamb, Strouts, and Skiston. We can tell that there's a theme afoot. Vidalski's making some inroads to that area for recruiting. Also making some inroads very clearly in the Roseau area, because not one, not two, but three Roseau players were scooped up into the fold. Now, it's weird. So these three players, Peyton Remick, Lily Erickson, and Jasmine Hovda, the top three scorers for Roseau this past season. Roseau, good team this year, made it to the section final. Lost to Moorhead, but the three top scorers and Remick leading that group with 57 points. I'm not sure if they played like on the same line. Again, that's one thing that's unsure. But 40 points for Erickson, 46 for Hovda. They're all either just turned 18 or going to turn 18 in the summer. But yet, according to your spreadsheet on Clean Sheet, Hovda is not coming in until 26-27, whereas we're expecting Remick and Erickson, who I believe even signed their letter of intent and are on track to come to St. Cloud this fall. That's a little weird. But if it is just Remick and Erickson this year, let's start with them, because they seem like intriguing prospects, homegrown Minnesota players that put up good stats. We can wrap our heads around Minnesota high school hockey in a way that I can't about the QCHL, for instance. So what's your take on Remick and Erickson, and then to a lesser degree Hovda, because we can't be excited about her this year per se, but just as a trio, what do you feel about those recruits?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about them. Obviously, you never really know how players are going to make the jump going from high school to college, but I think there's a lot of potential there. And obviously, the birthdays are all really close, but Hovda was a junior this year, so that's why she's coming in. So she must just be old for her grade, where the other ones are young. Obviously, with summer birthdays, you kind of have to make that choice of like, are you going to be like the youngest one in your grade, or are you going to be like the oldest one in your grade? So
that was
seems like the two are young, and then she's the older one. So kind of funny that they're like the same age, but she's in the grade below them.
Really? Actually, Erickson is an August birthday and Hovda is a July birthday. So Hovda's actually older than Erickson.
Yeah, because I mean, if you go look up the girls hockey hub roster, it says she's a junior and the other two were seniors this year. And even her Instagram, I had to like triple check it so many times, says Roseau 26. So
I didn't even get that far. I just looked at the 2007 birth year. I figured they were in the same grade, but nay.
Yeah, so kind of crazy. Or I don't know, maybe if Elite Prospects has birthdays wrong too. You never know. But
the possibility.
Yeah, so we'll get two of the three, and then the last chunk of it next year. But I think there's a lot of potential, and probably good that there's a lot of familiarity with like the Chicago area players and then them, because I think if players all have that chemistry already, that's probably definitely not a bad thing to have. But I'm just hoping we can get some scoring from somewhere. Yeah. I feel like obviously you probably have talked about it, but so many games I'm like, if we could just score like one more goal, 2 more goals. Obviously that's every game for every team, but just sometimes I'm like, if they score 2 goals on us, I don't think we're going to come back from that. So sometimes I'm just like, we need some goal scoring from somewhere.
I didn't go back to do the math this year, but I know after last year, it was like 10 games or something where if you scored 2 goals, you would have won a game. Just 2 goals. Like games that you were either scoreless tie or a 1-0 loss. And it's frustrating. You don't feel like you need that much offense. You just need a little bit more. Because we'll talk about this with the men's side too, the White Bear Lake kind of connection that Larson's forged. But you wonder if Remick and Erickson, if they're going to get line mate duty because of some built-in chemistry with them playing for Roseau and presumably for youth hockey before that as well. So excited to see those players. I wanted to take them as a grouping because of that connection. I would say so excited about them, but I think the two that really intrigue me are the European prospects. Maybe let's start with Maria McKalen, who I think we touched on last show, the Russian forward who was in the Ontario U22 Junior League, which that does seem like a legitimate, of any sort of junior league, if we're going to put juniors in quotations, that is maybe the most established junior league in women's hockey. And a very good season for North York in the OWHL. 12th league-wide in scoring, as far as from my scrolling on their stats page for that league. She turns 19, so it's a league that allows older players, but holding her own as a young player in that league. Left-handed shot, I think Adalski dropped the name Ovechkin when he was talking about her, which gets us excited. But certainly she seems like an intriguing prospect with a good pedigree in a league that we can sort of contextualize as, yes, these are other good players that have played in that league. And we can take that stat and run with it and feel like that is going to be something that we can work with. And then also, is it Riley Mustinen, Finnish prospect? Sure, I'm butchering that name.
Don't speak Finnish, so I'm sure you're doing great. That's what I would guess.
Riley, I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it. Raili, but we'll find out soon enough, and hopefully we find out real quick because she'll be turning heads. Let's hope. Like I said, Finnish prospect. She actually played on the same junior team or same Finnish team. I think it's just the Premier League in Finland, but the same league that Sunderland played for, as well as Janina Nyland. So some Huskies of old. Again, that might be a connection that Adalski, certainly didn't recruit Nyland. Sunderland might have been recruited by the old guy, as the players refer to Steve McDonald. But still, if you have players like Sunderland, I'm sure they still have connections back with that Team Cortain in Finland, which she played with. And perhaps looking at Mustinen's stat line, 28 points in 31 games, another left-handed shot. She's the second leading scorer on that team. Limited schedule, like 30. They only play like 32, 33 games, I think. And she has a U18 experience as well for Team Finland. Looks like in 2022. She turned 21, so she's an older player as well. So she's not, fresh out of high school here. She's got some experience that, like the Roseau players that we mentioned don't have. Has some more experience under the belt. So those are the two players internationally. And this is a roster we mentioned with an Olympic year coming up. Players like Vogt and Zimmerman, Sunderland herself, Urela, who represent teams that potentially could be they could be missing games for the Huskies come Olympic time next year, adding two more international players to the mix. But this has been a good recruiting hotbed for St. Cloud of late. And based on the numbers that I'm seeing, these two players make me excited in terms of these can be some offensive weapons.
For sure. I'm excited about them. Well, bring on the international players sometimes, especially the Finns. We've had, I feel like, good luck with them. So
we've had very good
more the merrier.
Men and the women. Good Finnish pipeline.
And then I wonder how much having a Finnish presence also behind the bench really helps with that pipeline as well. With
Nura Ratti. So yeah, excited to see those players. We've talked about Reese Strouts a little bit. She's also from that Chicago area. Played with Sydney Lamb. I think we just briefly touched on Juliana Labe. Again, apologies in advance for these pronunciations, but played in the more obscure Quebec League. Put up good numbers, but again, it's kind of like Sydney Jackal's 20 points at Lindenwood versus the 3 points for Holloway. You've got to contextualize that with competition that they're playing. These are, at this point, numbers on a screen from elite prospects. And it's difficult to gauge without any sort of video. But they're names that have hockey success on their resume. And this is a program that I think, like I said, we've got a good basis defensively in net. And if we're not asking to snap our fingers and get to Wisconsin level offense, we get to something approaching not even like average, like slightly below average offense with combined with the kind of goaltending that we've gotten. That might be enough to get you into look at the last 2 years. You've been 2 or 3 spots out of the last spot in the NCAAs these last couple of years with the anemic offense that you had. So I don't feel like we're, 70 goals away from making the field. I don't think we're that far away. And with these players, again, it's a lot. And with it so many at one time, you wonder if there's going to be some chemistry issues. I'm not sure. What do you think about this entire class as a whole? Again, it's different from the last couple of years where Radulski's relied more on transfers to plug the holes. We're really kind of swinging for youth and fresh faces. What's your overall take on this recruiting class for Radulski?
Yeah, again, it's a little hard to gauge just because I don't know a ton of the player, haven't watched a chunk of the players. I think there's a lot of potential in it. I wouldn't say there's anybody that's like a crazy home run, like, some of the recruits that like Ohio State's and Wisconsin's get, but I'm not really expecting us to get those either. So, I'm not expecting us to get like the top scorer at a U18s tournament or anything. Right. But I think it's good. I think there's just a lot of question marks we'll see kind of how they adapt to it, because it's a lot of players that I think have a lot of potential, but whether they can make that jump either into the WCHA for some of the transfers or just into the jump in college, I don't know. So I'd say there's a lot of unknowns for this year. So I feel like this season could kind of swing either way could be really good and surprise some people, or maybe if they don't all adapt very well, then it could be kind of meh. But we'll see, because some of those other teams in the WCHA, I don't know if you've talked about it, but like Mankato's recruiting classes in the future are very, very good. St. Thomas has some very, very good players. And, no shade to Bemidji, but it might take them a little while longer to catch up with everybody, but they have some decent players too. But WCHA is not getting any easier. So it's always tough, but I feel like this season could kind of lean many different ways depending on how everybody does when they get here.
And oddly enough, I think that can kind of help Huskies also trying to climb up in the standings if it becomes more common that Mankato or St. Thomas will pull a little bit more games away from Wisconsin. It wouldn't be as shocking of an upset if that were to happen. Whereas obviously Wisconsin losing only one game during the whole season, maybe that makes it a little bit easier for the Huskies even to move up if Radulski keeps pulling the class that they have been. So it's I'm really excited for this team, and I think Radulski's got a good path of where they're going. So
for sure,
let's flip over to the men. As we've had a lot of, obviously there was a lot of talk about the transfer portal and obviously the season, how terrible that went. Overall, though, obviously, Colin Ralph, that hurts, but as much as people were, I feel the Huskies fan base were, kind of on the edge of, I was going to say the cliffs of the Corey, but you know, how much they were on the edge of like everything's all doom and gloom and terrible. But I thought compared to a lot of other teams, the Huskies actually kind of turned out pretty well after how terrible and how many people thought everyone was just going to jump ship.
Yeah, it was definitely a frustrating season. I was kind of glad actually this season that it was the season where like I wasn't paying super close attention, since obviously with a new baby I wasn't going to stay up past like 9:30 p.m. most nights. So I was kind of okay that the season was like frustrating because I didn't actually pay. Well, like I still watched most of the games, but I wasn't like, okay, if we're losing by a lot, I'm just going to go to bed now, you know, like
your energy is focused elsewhere.
yeah, I was like, oh, we're losing horribly in the first period. Okay, I'm turning this off, you know, like most other times I'd watch the whole thing, but this season I was just like, based on the first period, sometimes you could just tell by the mood, like, yeah, it's not tonight. It's not tonight. So definitely frustrating, and I hope it goes better next year, but I was kind of okay. It was this season and not another season that I would have been like way more all into.
Let's talk about first the additions for the Huskies, and you know, kind of the three additions, 2 defense and a goalie, and with Max Smolinski, Finn Loftus there on the D. One transfer from RPI, who I believe we talked about last show, or did we talk about Finn as well last show? I guess I don't.
Yeah,
remember.
we've talked about all three of the transfer portal additions,
Cool.
but I want to get Sydney's take on them as well, because, and we'll talk about like getting like a depth chart kind of in our heads and where like especially these transfer additions play into that. Because I don't think, I mean, Burzen's the goalie that they got for Maine. I'm not sure how much we should expect from him. Goaltending is always a question mark, and we'll get into that with Showstack as well. But as far as Smolinski and Loftus, because of the defensive losses you had over the offseason, I think they're going to be players that are going to be regular players, especially Smolinski. Loftus, maybe you could see him getting scratched in the early part of the season, but Smolinski, I think, is a guy that's going to come in as like maybe quarterbacking the second power play unit to start the season. So I expect him to get regular ice time. Where are you thinking? It's because it's just on the defense, we can maybe kind of isolate that position right now. But in terms of, yes, you can go back last show. We did talk a lot about Smolinski and Loftus there, but your takes on those 2 players in particular before we get to the recruits.
Yeah, I mean, with Smolinski, kind of the same as what you guys said for both him and Loftus. Of like Smolinski, I would assume has a little bit bigger of a role just because he, was more of a regular at RPI and put up some decent numbers there and that type of thing, which hopefully will be good and get us some scoring, but also be fairly solid defensively, which will be good. So. And, some more veteran type experience too, since he's a junior, I think, or coming
Correct.
in as a senior probably this year. So a little bit more experience. And, Finn Loftus too, I've watched him a bit just over juniors and stuff. And, I don't think he's going to come in and be like a Dylan Anhorn necessarily. But I'm interested to see what he can do, because obviously I don't think he had really a whole lot of ice time to show what he could do at UMass. So I don't know if he'll be like a crazy, huge addition right away, but it's always cool to see Minnesota kids, coming back and playing closer to home and that sort of thing. So hoping he can be, a positive addition to the D core, but I don't think he's going to be like a top pairing D or anything, at least this season. I don't know if he'll, keep developing and, develop into something bigger. You never know, but probably same take as you guys have for the most part on those guys.
When you say that you've, covered like for some juniors, like, do you have the favorite leagues? Like, do you partial to covering some junior events over other ones? I feel like
so
you'd have
different.
some crazy null stories or anything.
Oh, the null guys are insane sometimes. There's some, because like the USHL seems so professional sometimes, and then I don't know if you guys have seen the Vietnam Instagram account. If you haven't, go take a deep dive, because there was a very interesting Instagram post made about their overtime game winner that was definitely kicked in yesterday in the game 3 of their finals. And if you just look at the comments, they're really terrifying. But the Null is the Wild West, honestly. So sometimes that's kind of fun. USHL is sometimes way more polished. Not all the teams.
Jeez, I wonder what team.
Not all the teams.
Not all of Omaha is polished.
Yeah, but the Null, sometimes it's so different. Some teams are run very professionally, and other teams, you hear some stories and you're like, okay, that is interesting. So it's always interesting talking to those guys and being like, what type of situation are you in? Okay, gotcha. But yeah, really depends. But I mean, I've been to a bunch of Norseman games. Those are always fun. The Null's so crazy, though. You never know what you're going to get.
I don't want to throw us into the ditch here too much, but
yeah.
It seems like the early one of the takes I see emerging as far as after the CHL door opens for college hockey is that the NAHL is really going to get the shaft of that as far as players that are recruited out of that league, which the last 10 years has really grown as a league that's provided very good NCAA players. Are you as doom and gloom on that end of it? Is this going to kill the NAHL in terms of feeding players to the NCAA?
I don't think it's going to...
that was kicked in.
Yeah, did you see it? Yeah, it's so bad. But if you read the comments on that, they're horrifying. They're so bad. I don't know what the deal is. I guess I'm not into some of that, but yeah, I'll have to see your reaction as you see some of that. But yeah, I don't know. I guess back to your question, I'm not full doom and gloom. I don't think the Null's going to die, but for leagues like the NA3, what are they? Because for me, I'm like, well, the NA is probably going to be more D3 now. Like, it still is some D3, but probably more so, and then a couple guys here and there D1. And I'm like, who's going to play for the NA3 now? Or who's going to play for the USPHL, the rando, the NCDC, the other teams?
No, Lumberjacks actually dropped pretty well.
Are they still around? I was going to add, are the Lumberjacks still around?
Yeah, and they're a top NA3 team. So I don't really, because if you're playing there, what are you going to do? If you're a top player there, maybe you play D3, but otherwise, where are you going to go if you're not one of the best players there? Now, if there's more players at every recruit level. So I don't know. But yeah, that goal was kicked in. If you watch that apparently no video review, just it stood and was an overtime game winner.
Yeah.
So it's not on topic, but
no. Well, that's kind of how our podcasts go. Everything just just goes off the rails. But
gotcha.
That's I have because when you're working around, you're doing many different, because especially before, obviously having a child changes everything.
Yeah.
But you kind of just random events you were at. I mean, you were even doing some Bantams, Pee-wees events. you were just pretty much any time a puck was dropped, you were out there chasing something.
Yeah, I mean, I was doing a little bit of everything for the Rink Live, and then now I'm kind of just mostly doing high school and juniors, but then I'll do some youth stuff for Youth Hockey Hub when they need me to, and I think I'm taking probably by the time we record this, I may have taken another job. I don't think it will be announced yet, but I'm not sure exactly what ages I'll be covering for that. So kind of all over the place. So people are like, what league do you cover? I'm like, well, whatever they need me to do. Not pro for the most part, but I guess I did do some Frost stuff the first year. I didn't this year, but whatever.
Cool. Back to the
championship. You cover a Pee-wee game? I got you.
Back to the championship. I might go on Saturday. Because they've got a 4:00 game, so I might take the family.
Yeah.
So, But anyway, I'm sorry. Back to the men. And I don't know, where'd we leave off? Incoming.
Yes,
Sure.
we were talking about defense. We talked about Loftus and Smolinski coming through the transfer portal. Maybe we'll set the stage like we did on the women's side. The losses on the defensive core: Litke, Colin Ralph, we mentioned, Warren Clark also leaving by the portal, and then Carl Falk graduating. So that's 4. And with Litke and Ralph, you can make the case your 2 best defensemen are gone. Coming back, we've got Cooper Wiley, Mason Reiners, Josh Zinger, Thor Bufflin, Caleb Thiessen. I never knew how to pronounce his name, but he's back as well. We know with Loftus and Smolinski, we've talked about them. In terms of guys coming in on the defensive side of things, we've got Tanner Henricks and Joe Belisle coming in. And of these 2, Henricks is the sexier prospect, already being drafted. He's drafted last summer by Columbus in the 4th round. Big kid, 6'4", 205. His brother Ty just won a natty with Western Michigan, so they'll get to hook up in conference play this season. Still young. I mean, 19. He turns 19 in July. That's young for the men's side. And good year this year with Lincoln. We'll talk with Shostak, goaltender, played with him on a very good Lincoln team this year. 4 goals, 29 assists from the point, right-handed shot, California kid. Excited to see him. And then Joe Belisle. We talked about, like on the women's side with Roseau connection, Belisle's the first of several White Bear Lake prospects that we'll touch on here on the men's side. Belisle, along with Nolan Road and Aiden Welch. I think they were all graduated the same year in 23 from White Bear. Again, I might be off. Elite prospects might be off a year or 2 on that. But Belisle played with Sioux Falls this past year in the USHL. 6 foot. It's got some good size. Could pack on some pounds. I think he's 176 as much as elite prospects.
Hit the weight room, bud.
Just bulk up this summer. Get some meat diet over the summer. But
the second Belisle to play for St. Cloud State. I don't know if there's any relation, but
God, who was the first? It's right on the tip of my tongue.
TJ.
That's right.
TJ Belisle. I think he played like 2 or 3 games back.
Like early Motzko era.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say. I think he played more than 2 or 3. I think he was like on that 8-7 game. I think he was in that group. That's how I'm picturing it in my head.
I really don't think so.
You can.
Oh, geez, it wasn't even that far. No, it was 13, 14.
What?
14, 15.
Oh, I'm way off.
Yeah.
Who am I thinking of?
God.
Maybe there was another TJ on those teams.
Cam Reed. Were you thinking of Cam Reed?
Again, we're off in another ditch.
Oh, sorry.
We've got to guess, Weldy. Come on.
Reel it in.
We've got to behave this week. Belisle turning 20 in a couple of months. But, with Henricks, I think you've got you've got the possibility of a very good prospect with Henricks. Draft picks, Weldy and I sort of not argue, but we bicker about this from time to time as far as how much stock we put into draft picks. Henricks and maybe Road. Again, maybe you can flash some if you have some insight on if Road is going to get drafted this summer. Probably the only other guy who might get drafted would be Road this year, but whereas last year you had guys like Ralph, a second-round draft pick, coming in. It might just be Henricks this year as far as having an NHL logo next to his name on the line chart. But so I've been excited to see Henricks for a while now. Belisle, I have less information to go on with him. But what are you feeling with these 2 players in particular slotting into the D core?
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming Henricks will definitely get some minutes. I don't really know who he's going to end up being paired with or anything, but obviously being drafted, that's huge. And, a guy that isn't super small either, so kind of has a couple things we could use on the blue line for sure. So excited to see what he can do. And Joe Belial, he's kind of one of those players I'm not really sure what to expect. I wouldn't be super surprised if he doesn't like play a ton right away, kind of with the freshman D that come in, get a couple games here and there, but I'm not sure if he's going to be a guy who's going to be a regular that first year or not, just because, he's been good, but I wouldn't say he's had like necessarily super eye-popping stats or anything, but I think Henrik's definitely will for sure. And looking at some of the other players just on the decor, yeah, I'm not necessarily sure if we'll see like a ton of Joe Belial, but obviously there's a couple other players too. I'm like, well, I don't know about this person, or like we talked about Finn Loftus already too, of like, well, if you had the choice between those two, I don't really know who you would play necessarily. So we'll see. But I assume we're going to see a good chunk of Henrik's because I think he's got a lot of potential for sure.
Yeah, and you got to think like with Henrik's, there's some similarities there just with like the size and the drafted status with Colin Ralph.
Yeah. So
now
could fill that role a little bit.
I don't think it's going to play any part in like Larson's, like how he's going to play him. Like you can't say that Colin Ralph bolted because he didn't get opportunities here. You could say that about
he had
Warren
plenty
Clark.
of ice time. Yeah.
Warren Clark, you can make that argument, but Ralph didn't bolt because he wasn't getting opportunities.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think Henrik's is going to be in that same camp
for sure.
But yeah, as far as Belial, because we got nine defensive players that we're mentioning here: Wiley, Reiners, Tyson, Zinger, Loftus, Smolinski, Bufflin, Henrik's, and Belial. You had 9 defensive players appear this past year for the Huskies, and that took thank you, a little late. Hopefully, it was chalked it up to a little bit of off-season rust from Weldy there. But
I was just gonna add it in post, but then when you circled back to it, I was like, okay, I'll actually do it now.
I'll let it slide. But you had the 9 defensemen last year, and you can make the argument that Tyson maybe would have even gotten his 11 games if not for Wiley's injury, which was in the second half of the season, sort of forced the hand to dip into Tyson. Tyson, a guy who dipped his toe in the portal last summer, couldn't find any bites, came back, and like I said, didn't really see ice time until necessity forced it. If we're talking about the bottom part of that depth chart, Tyson and Belial are probably right there. They're different player types, I think, and Tyson's got some value. I think he's a bruising kind of physical player that you kind of like a bit of that grit and sandpaper from time to time. I'm not sure if he's going to be like a regular top 6 defensive player. I'm not sure if that's like a good recipe. I've never been very high on Josh Zinger based on the last year. I thought he was kind of a disaster.
Yeah.
So I'm not opposed. I've always been in favor of putting him up front in the forward position.
Yeah.
I think Larson disagrees, but there was a lot of intriguing parts here. Some that we already know with like Wiley and Reiners. And Smolinski is a guy that we mentioned I think has got power play opportunities in his future. Thor Bufflin showed some flashes last year of some good play and got some power play opportunities as well, and had power play experience in juniors, extensive power play experience. It could be an opportunity for him this year. But in that, like after Wiley and Reiners, who are seniors and like barring injury, guaranteed ice time, the others, Henrik's, we feel pretty confident that he's going to get every opportunity to crack by on an every game basis. The others, though, I mean, Smolinski can maybe put in that kind of veteran, he's kind of earned it camp, not at St. Cloud, but at least his track record would indicate that. The others, though, I'm not sure. I think there's going to be a healthy competition between the others, and that includes players like Loftus and Bufflin, guys that have experience at the NCAA level. It's, I think, a unit with promise. I still think, like the women's side, we saw the offensive struggles of the men's side this year. I think that's your biggest question mark and the area that you need to improve the most. This defensive core, though, last year, I mean, when the second half happened, we'll just put it that way, there was really no area of the game that you were excelling at. And part of that was injury related with Wiley. That didn't help things. But it's not like this was a stout defensive core that we can kind of hand wave away as any sort of question mark for this team. I think we've got talent. It's just I'm not sure of game one. We're not going to have that kind of chemistry with defensive pairings. And in terms of units, power play and penalty kill in particular, who's going to step up among the players that we mentioned? It's, like I said, a talented group. I'm just not sure how it all shakes out. I was trying to put back the napkin, who's going to pair with who. And other than Wiley and Reiners, who I think is kind of a foregone conclusion to at least start the year as a pairing, the others, it's kind of putting in a blender and see who matches, who's got some chemistry sparked in training camp. And nothing beyond that's a for sure thing for this defensive unit. But like I said, there's some promise here. It's intriguing.
Yeah, for sure.
I think kind of the main thing is if I were Brett Larson, and I like to think of myself as obviously even in my hockey knowledge with Brett Larson. So I would definitely what I would do is I would just try to find the right pairing with Adam Ingram and try to get him to forget about this last year, everything that happened, and try to get him kind of back going and jump starting. Because I think, the key to, I think, getting back to scoring at a, acceptable pace, I think would kind of start with him kind of getting back on track and forgetting about the last year.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't want to flame anybody, but I think the biggest disappointments were probably him. And honestly, I thought Josh Singer was going to be a huge part of last year. And then, because watching that first scrimmage, I was really excited to watch him. And then I don't feel like he really did very much. So I don't want to call anybody out.
On the same page on that one.
I'm hoping they both.
You put it nicely, I think.
Turn it up. Yeah, because I thought at that scrimmage I was watching him skate and going, "Wow, what a good skater!" and was really excited. And then the rest of the year was like, I don't know where that player I just watched went. But okay, all right. So yeah, I'm hoping both of them can kind of turn it around and have good years for the both of them.
Yeah, and we're talking about this offense with Ingram, 8 points last year, a guy that we probably thought was going to crack 30 based on the first 2 years at St. Cloud. We'll never know probably the extent of the injuries that he had. I think that did factor into it, but
probably.
He didn't miss that many games. I think he was probably playing through something, but hopefully it is a blip, like a Cranola type blip, where he had his bad junior year and rebounded for his great senior year. Love to see that from Ingram. If he even sniffs the 50-point territory that Cranola did in his senior year after his blip was like a 20-point season for his junior year, to put that in perspective. Ingram's to 8 is another kind of class of a junior slump. So let's hope he rebounds there, and hopefully he's fully healthy as well. But it wasn't just Ingram. This was, from what our research was, the worst offensive performance from a Huskies team at the D1 level, and by a significant margin, by average goals per game. It's a bottom 10 nationwide offense last year, and you didn't graduate a ton of guys. That's the weird thing. It's not like the women's side where half of the forward unit either transferred out or graduated. Your losses were mainly contained to Selquist, Ports, and I think that's it. Rosborough is a question mark. We were talking about this before the show. I think he's got a year left of eligibility, which, go back to the second half of the year, you thought that I was harsh on Zinger. I was not singing praises on Ryan Rosborough either. And so I would be very much okay with if he didn't return. But the fact that he is going to be, if he does return, one of the few seniors on this roster, if I'm guessing, he's not only going to be back, but he's probably going to be wearing a letter for this team. So we'll see if that is one piece in terms of that would shuffle around my thoughts on how the line charts are kind of playing out in terms of who we're bringing in. But so we've got Hall, Mietin, and Brnovic. That was kind of the top line at the end of the year. And again, use top line advisedly. This was a very bad offense. Gardner, Gross, and Thorson, they seem to I'm just kind of taking line charts from the last couple of games of the year, how the year ended out. You had Ingram. He was jumbled around all season, as Weldy said, finding some guy that clicks with him. 2 years ago, it seemed like Gross and Ingram were kind of clicking. It didn't really work last year. Getting some guy to get Ingram going. Maybe that's Nolan Road. We'll talk about him. Other returners, we know Grant Deshawn. He's going to give you a good effort. Jack Ryman. Jack Rogers, who was injured for almost all of last year, I think just 3 or 4 games that he appeared in. He's back. Ethan Acoin, Ocean Wallace. Wallace just 2 games last year. Acoin more playing time. And he's a guy that's shown flashes here and there. Nothing really consistent, though. So there's warm bodies here. But in terms of especially the bottom 6 last year, we talked about that at length throughout the second half, just like no production, literally none, for long stretches at a time. And you'd think that you're going to work with guys like Brnovic and Hall and Miettinen. It is weird. Like you look at the top scorers from last year, the top 7 scorers for St. Cloud are all returning next year. In this day and age in college hockey, that's pretty rare. Usually you see rosters, your top 4 or 5 scorers are all gone, either because of age or now the transfer portal. Having your top 7 guys come back is a good thing. And it says something about Larson being able to retain players. Now, the other shoe dropping there is that, yes, the top 7 scorers on a bottom 10 offense in the country. But that's not to say that there's skill here and there's something to build on with guys.
Nowhere to go but up.
Nowhere to go but up.
Hopefully,
and who are you slotting in? And Nolan Road, among the forwards that are coming in, headlines that group, I would say. As I said, probably the only one of these other, Henrik's already drafted, as we mentioned. Of the other guys that we're going to talk about, he's going to be the one that might get drafted. I'd like to get your take on that, Sydney. But great year at Tri-City this past year in the USHL. Top 10 scorer league-wide in the USHL. Center. That's another thing that it's a little tough when you're doing research in terms of who's actually like a center. And everyone can play center. It's not like it's not like you're playing catcher in baseball. Like you need to play that specific position. But center, you have to do a lot of extra work than you do at the wing. And Rode proved not only that he was a capable center, but a star at that position. And I'm excited to see him. We saw like with Brnovic, talking with him, ending up as your top scorer as a freshman, and really towards the end of the season, like one of your few options, few weapons offensively. This is a roster where a freshman can step in on day one and move up the depth chart very quickly. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's going to be the case with Rode, but I'm trying to be optimistic. And of the forwards, he's the one that I'm most looking forward to. What say you?
Yeah, I think people should definitely get excited about Nolan Road. He's really, really good. I would be surprised if he's a top player. I don't know if he'll do quite as many points as Brnovic did this past year, but I also wouldn't be surprised if everybody does better if he does put up points like that, because he is very, very good and had a super good season as the top line center for the most part in Tri-City. So he's the real deal. I don't know if anyone, sometimes with overagers, it's hard to tell if an NHL team's going to take a chance on him. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody did, though. He's not going to be like a first round pick or anything, but I wouldn't be surprised if somebody does try to take a chance on him. So that would be awesome. I always love to get more draft picks, but I think one kind of dark horse people are forgetting about that I'm assuming is coming in this year, but obviously with Rosborough, we don't really know either way yet. Not sure if it's finalized. I'm pretty excited about Noah Ernest too. I think a lot of people kind of he might be in the shadow a little bit of everyone knows Nolan Road now because he had such a good year. But Noah Ernest, I think, is going to be really good too. So I think he's a candidate to come in and make some noise a little bit too. But yeah, I don't know. I think we have so much potential at the forward core. I'm just kind of confused why it didn't really come together this last year because we have plenty of good pieces. They just didn't work for whatever reason. Because I'm a huge Gavin Thorson fan too, so I think he definitely has potential as well. I just, for whatever reason, last year was weird for everybody, I guess.
Yeah, I felt like Thorson really kind of picked it up as the season went on. I do feel like he's got a little bit of that Abby Murphy kind of frustration a little bit, whereas
it can be, yeah.
He's a little bit of an agitator where it's like, I'd rather you just put the puck in the net.
Kind of like Yami sometimes too.
Yeah, exactly. So
can be like that, but yeah.
Now, Ernest, that's also Rozo, right? If I remember correctly.
Yep. Yeah, he's Rozo.
So we got the pipeline going for both, on both sides, for the women and the men from Rosso.
You mentioned a great year at Sioux Falls, 50 points in 55 games. Another guy that could use the keto diet. I think this summer, 168 pounds.
Yeah, some of those guys I know definitely.
A little bit of bulk.
Definitely some. I think that might have been the knock on Ingram too, is he's just been like, obviously I don't want to just talk about people's weights because that's weird, but like he's definitely one of those guys that it's like needs to get stronger for
Especially,
sure.
I mean,
it's like
the NCHC
I hate calling people out like that, but it's like, dude, if you're gonna end up, if you want to play pro, be on the NHL team that has drafted you, you gotta be, stronger and bigger and all that stuff. I see all the Huskies at Chipotle all the time. I'm like, you need like 20 more Chipotle bowls every single day. Get that sponsorship or some get the double triple chicken in there or something, dude.
I'm always reminded of Martin St. Louis, back in his heyday, and there was a picture of his thighs. And I know you're going to take this out of context and clip it, whatever. I don't care. But Martin St. Louis' thighs, like there was a picture, and just these muscles were just huge on him for a guy who's
Micah
like
Miller legs.
Yeah, like for being like 5'7".
Him he was like 5'9", but like 200 pounds or something. They got to go on that Micah Miller diet. Whatever he was doing.
And that was kind of talking about like Thorson, that was kind of his question mark too. Is he a little undersized? He certainly didn't play like an undersized player.
Yeah, he's short, but he's honestly pretty like sturdy compared to other guys that are smaller. Because I've interviewed him out of skates like at the state tournament and stuff, and he's definitely not tall. But he's definitely a bit sturdier than some of those guys that are short and really skinny. So I think that helps him a little bit, as he's fairly strong actually for a guy who's definitely not the tallest, to put it nicely.
And then with Showstack coming in, and I would say expectations for him, I mean, do I want to say Mike Lee expectations? I mean, I can't think of another goalie that has had expectations like he has coming in.
Was Lee USHL goalie of the year coming in?
I believe so. Yeah, and then gold medal winning on Blazes.
And Blaze saying that he will win a national title for St. Cloud, which was his curse of death, as it turned out in retrospect. But yeah, Showstack, goalie of the year for the USHL. He was a nomination, I think, for player of the year or MVP or whatever the top prize is.
I think so, yeah.
As well. 9/11 save, but that was the best in the league. It's USHL's a league where goaltender stats.
It's tough to get, hard
it's a tough
stats.
League for goalies. And Lincoln was a very good team. I mean, I guess you got to put that into the context. Like he was playing in front of the best team in the USHL record wise. But with Pasha's absence or his departure, we're thinking Showstack's game one starter.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume so. Just USHL goalie of the year is not an easy thing to win, so I'd assume yes. I think the guy from Maine will be interesting. I haven't seen him a ton, but I know he had a pretty good junior career for the most part. So I know he didn't play a ton at Maine, but that's obviously because they had a really good, super tall goalie there that they were going with. So kind of interested to see him because I'm assuming he's going to get some playing time at least, because even if, Jan, if that's how you say his name, comes in and is super good, he's still a freshman. So I wouldn't be surprised if they rotate in some other guys. And we know Jimmy Gray. We know what he's going to bring to the table. So I'm assuming he'll get a little bit, but
we call him cocaine.
Just say
bear.
that. You can't
Yeah,
just say
yeah, I think I
lots
remember
of
hearing that.
cocaine.
It's not the drug. It's the aesthetic.
The chaos
he brings
style.
in a very cocaine
Yeah.
aesthetic.
Yeah, so
that.
we know what style he brings already. So we already kind of know that. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see all three goalies at least at some point. But I'd assume Shostak's going to be the guy, unless he shows up and for some reason isn't. Then we might have a little bit of an issue if
drops another bathroom appliance on his foot. Maybe.
God, yeah, and yeah, I don't know, but I'm assuming it's going to be him, and then maybe we'll see kind of a rotating number two between Berzins and Gray, but I have no idea. It's a lot of new people.
It is, and coaches don't tend to just throw starting goaltender jobs to freshmen. But I think this is a case where he can make that jump, being with kind of accolades that Shostak was able to garner for this last year.
It worked out well for Ferschweiler.
So otherwise,
well, even that though, that was a first half split with him and Rowe. Do you feel like there's going to be a split with Patrick?
Maybe it'll be like he'll get 50%, and then the other two will get like 25%.
See, I would have thought that there would have been
get a majority.
I was thinking that because going into this past year, I'm not sure if we certainly Welding and I were not like 100% like it's Posh or die. Yeah, and as it turned out, he played every minute until the
season was literally Posh and then die.
Pretty much, yeah.
And it seemed like Larson used the month of October to shuffle around every other piece, forward and defense, but yet goaltender from day one, after that first shutout at St. Thomas, he didn't relinquish. He didn't play. He played every minute until the toilet landed on his foot, and so we could see that. I would love to see that if it means that one goaltender plays every minute of the first half of the season. Let's say that must mean that it's gone somewhat well, because if we're at that point of the season and three guys have equally split the time, well, then no one's took that job by the horns. So I don't care who it is. I would assume it's going to be Shostak, just based on his pedigree. But as you mentioned, we've got some other candidates in net. But my hunch is that we're going to see Shostak get that opening night draw. I don't want to leave out, I think I may have mentioned him before just in passing, but Aiden Welch, the other White Bear Lake, the third White Bear Lake product of this recruiting class, who's got a little bit of that size that Noah Ernest and company are lacking, 6'2", 207. So maybe you can give the smaller guys some tips on how to bulk up over the summer. But 21-year-old, he's turning 21 next week, actually. But so he's got to come in. He's got no junior eligibility. We were talking earlier before the show. Got some other prospects that are in that 20 range that still have a year left of junior eligibility. Nathan Brown, Brock Such. These are guys that are likely going to be pushed off to the future because there's so many returning bodies on the forward end. I feel like you can make do with guys like Ernest and Rode, in particular, those two. Do you see Ernest centering at all? Because it seemed like he did some. He had some.
Hard to say. I feel like Rode would be more of a center just because he was like playing that top line center role. So it seems like he's kind of more of that true center. So I wouldn't be sure if Ernest is more of a moves more to a wing in college. But again, it's not a perfect science, and kind of just depends on who's playing well and winning faceoffs. It seems like we are gonna need some face-off guys, especially with like no more Sahlquist type thing. So we'll see. I don't really know. I don't have their face-off stats or anything, but that might be a big part of it too.
Yetnin and Gross were really good last year too. When I did the deep dive, they were all around 55%. Sahlquist, Yetnin, and Gross, and then Rosborough was at 37% when I checked last year.
Yeah, I don't really think. Yeah, he's not. Yeah. Get somebody else in there to play center.
Not a ton of pluses on Rosborough's the back of his baseball card.
I feel like we have a couple guys that rotate at that fourth line center type position, so we'll see kind of who ends up there.
And I hope, and because if Rosborough's back, you would have the possibility to bring that whole fourth line back. Rosborough, Nashan, and Ryman.
Gosh.
Again, with Larson, sometimes it's the comfortability of these guys have been around, they know each other. With how it ended up last year, and he was more willing towards that second half of the season to mix things up, almost to extent where it's like game in, game out, we didn't have any sort of consistency between the lines. But when it's a red alert situation with a lack of offense, you feel like
once the iceberg hit, once Jack is going to the bottom of the Atlantic there at the end, it's you got to do something.
Yeah, once the Elger tank lands on the foot, that is your starting goaltender. That was the beginning of the end.
What a story!
Knew. But
so
So again, maybe final thoughts wrapping up this St. Cloud State, the men's side recruiting class. I mean, the numbers, it's not as dramatic in terms of the numbers that the women's team have. Like, you're basically turning over half the team on the women's side.
Yeah.
It's not that drastic for the men's side, but still the task is maybe even taller. It's like the women's team, I was mentioned, 1 or 2 spots away from pairwise. St. Cloud men's hockey was not 1 or 2 spots away from getting a berth in the NCAAs last year. There's more work to make up in order to get into that territory. Where are you kind of evaluating this class as a whole, just the commits as well as the transfer portal additions?
Yeah, I mean, I think the portal additions are solid. I don't think they're anything crazy. I'm optimistic about them, but I don't think we're going to get anybody that's like absolutely insane, but I hope I'm wrong. And the recruits, I do really like the recruits. Like Nolan Road, I think is going to be really good. Tanner Hendricks has a ton of potential. And Showstack obviously too does. And the other guys too, I think could be good as well. But obviously I think we got a good core coming in, core group of guys. And I think we have some interesting prospects down the line too. I always see people, some of the negative Husky fans that are like, well, I don't know any of these recruits. And I'm like, well, a lot of them actually are pretty good. So I'm feeling pretty good about our pipeline. We're not going to be getting the first rounders anyway. So like, I think we got a decent group. And we'll see. I'm kind of feeling the same way about this next season as I was before last season, where it was kind of like this year could go either way depending on a lot of things. So sort of the same with the women's side of like, there's a lot of question marks to this year of it could go surprisingly well, or it could go pretty badly. There's just a lot of unknowns at this point of what we'll see.
Yep. Sure enough. So perfect. Before I let you go, I know I've had you on for long enough, but you told me previously that you were actually on the voting committee for Patty Kaz. Do you mind talking about that whole process? Do you have time for that?
For sure. Yeah, I sure can.
Just kind of for how were you tapped for that? That was like a couple year stint, like a 2-year stint, right?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. I was just contacted about it while I was working for the Rink Live. Obviously, I'd already been kind of in the journalism game for a while, so I wasn't like new to the scene or anything, but got asked to be on the committee and obviously said yes, because that's a huge honor.
Sure.
And I was like, of course. But basically, we're not allowed to like talk details obviously about what we talk about in our decisions. Like we have like a call with all the people on the voting committee and kind of discuss the players, so I'm not going to give like specific things people said because I don't think we're supposed to do that, but I can talk about kind of
you want to be invited back, right?
Yeah, hopefully in the future. I think I have to take a break now since I did my 2-year stint, but I was on the voting committee
2 years of duty.
Yeah, this year and last year. And I was super honored because I believe there's only 13 people on the selection committee, so it's quite small. Ooh. It's not a big committee. And there's only, let me count here, 1, 2, 3, 4 media members, 1 at large, and the rest are coaches. So there's not many non-coaches. So I was super excited to serve on that board. And basically, like, to narrow down the list of Patty Kaz nominees or people that could be potentials for it down to 10, coaches just do that. So, like, we don't do that. Like, by the time they give you the top 10, like, it's already decided the top 10. So I think the coaches all get to vote on who they think should make the top 10, and then we see the top 10 and kind of look through that and talk about it. So really, you don't do much for most of the year until typically around like March-ish time. You get kind of like a timeline, and usually we find out the top 10 in like March time, or let me see when I got this.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, sometime, late February, early March, depending on when
I think it's like
the season
regional
is.
weekend, maybe.
Yeah,
Or
somewhere
maybe the
around
week
there
before.
when the top 10 comes out, we find out who the top 10 are. And you kind of got to do your duty of looking into all the candidates and seeing who they are. And then we end up having a conference call with all of us voters where we kind of go through each of the athletes and talk about them. And if their coaches are on the call, then they can kind of talk about them. Obviously, not all the coaches, since there's only like 13 of us are on the call, but usually it's like, oh, well, have you coached against this person? Or what can you say about this player that's good, bad, etc.? Why should they win this award? So we kind of just get on a call, talk about them, and then after that, you get your ballot and you get to vote for them. And I know people are always interested in how that sort of thing works, and it's super interesting because although there's a top 10, we're not ranking the top 10. I believe it's just top 2 or 3. I should see if I can find my ballot here.
Is it like one coach from every conference, or is it just kind of a smattering of?
Yeah,
did you
let
have
me
like
look
3
here.
WCHA
Oh, and
reference
then on the
candidates,
ballot, you get to rank your top 3. So obviously the top 1 is who you think should win the award, and then you put a 2 and a 3 as well. So you're not ranking the top 10, just top 3.
Sure.
So I don't know who everybody else voted for, but you just turn in your ballot then, usually after we do that conference call. So
was this
that's
the
always
last?
interesting.
Sorry, were you on the committee the last 2 years? So 25 and 24.
Yeah, so 25 and 24. And then the committee this year, let me see if I can find. I don't know if I'm supposed to say, but I can see what conferences they're from.
That was one of my other questions.
It looks like there are coaches from each conference, but there's more than one for some of them.
So it's just, you said it's 13 people total.
Yeah, let me count.
I thought the voting body was much bigger than that.
9,
Surprised
10,
me.
11, 12, 13. 13 for the top 10 narrowed on down, but before the top 10, I don't have any say in that. That's just, I believe the coaches narrow that down.
And there's like a fan vote that I know has a
I don't
small,
know if that factors into it,
but yeah, so there's,
we just
they get you the 10, but then you
narrow
get
it down from there.
I didn't realize that there was like a conference call factor.
I don't
they
think
just
it's
mailed
like,
out a ballot and that was it.
I don't think it's required, but obviously everybody attends it because you kind of want to hear what everybody says. And obviously, like, I'm not a coach, so I want to hear like, oh, well, maybe this coach might have insight as to like, oh, I've coached against this player, I've coached this player before at something. It's kind of nice to hear like that kind of perspective of it. So it's definitely interesting, and it's really cool to help decide the vote. And I'm always curious, like, I don't get to know the final tally of them or anything, but I'm always curious sometimes of like, oh, I wonder how close it was this year, because sometimes there's conversations and you're like, oh, interesting. Because I'd love to know who everybody votes for, but
now, did you
secretive
when you go into that? Then you submit your ballot for the 3. Do you know who they are before it gets officially released, or do you find out the same time as everybody else?
The winner, I don't think I don't know if it's been the same in the past, but I haven't known the winner until they've announced the winner. Okay. Like, I submit my ballot and who I think's going to win, and typically I think I have a decent read on, like, it seems like maybe people are leaning this way, one way or the other in the call, but you never know how people are going to vote. Since we don't vote on the call, we just kind of have a discussion.
And It's
So-
it is. It's just one vote after 10. You don't vote again after there's the top 3.
Nope, just after the 10 are narrowed down, you vote for your 1, 2, 3, and then they announce the winner when they announce the winner. So I didn't know the winner in advance at all. The last 2 years, I don't know if that's always been the same or not, but
Do you know if the Hobie does it similar to this?
I think the Hobie is probably more voters if I had to guess, but I'm not sure. I know people who've served on that committee, but I have not been on the Hobie committee, so I don't know.
Did you know the final 3 before that was released?
I didn't know any of the
So nothing.
final. I think the top
Okay.
10, I don't remember, but I haven't known the final
Sure.
people. I probably could have guessed similarly to who I thought would get it because, you can kind of deduce like, okay, well, I don't
Read
think
the
this
room
player's
of-
going to get
sure.
it. I don't think this player's probably going to get it, but
Well, I mean, so
Did you
never
have
know.
did they almost come to fisticuffs in the room?
I
it was
don't think
through
there was
Zoom
any
or whatnot, but virtual,
fisticuffs. Sometimes there's always moments where it's like, oh, I think I can tell who this person's probably going to put one a little bit. I mean, I'm not somebody who really talks a lot in that call. I'm more of a listener for the most part, since I'm just media. But I don't know. I feel like I try to take it really seriously because it's really important. So I don't
Well,
know
yeah.
if everybody is that, into it as me because I'm like, oh gosh, I don't want to mess up my ballot because it's an important. What if it's decided by like 1 point?
well,
you know?
I'm gonna throw you the tough question because you
Yeah.
sat on a committee with a minor controversy with Izzy Daniels' win in 24 over O'Brien and Sims from Wisconsin, and
Yeah.
the talking point there was East Coast bias and Wisconsin players cancel each other out. Who'd you vote for that year
I will say I did vote for Izzy Daniel, I believe. So
for number 1?
I'll put that out there. Yeah, I think I did also just because of the Wisconsin players kind of canceling each other out.
It is an argument to make.
And also sometimes too, I know people vote on awards in a different way, but for me too, I'm like, well, what did you specifically kind of bring for your team and help your team out a lot? And sometimes with Wisconsin, it's hard to narrow it down when it's like, okay, well, everybody is an all-star.
You take
sometimes.
X player off, it's like it's still Wisconsin.
That's why this year too, I was a little surprised I was surprised and also not surprised that they had so many players because sometimes when you have multiples, it cancels out because,
Right.
What if half the people only vote for this girl and half the people only vote for this girl? But I feel like in our call the one year, there was a lot of really good points made about Izzy Daniel. And sometimes I think people vote on awards based on like how good of a player they'll be in the future, like in the pro, in like the PWHL or something. And I don't tend to vote for awards like that. Same with like the Mr. Hockey voting. I think sometimes people vote like, well, this player is the best player, like will be in the future. And I'm not really like a projection type person. I feel like I'm
Sure.
more of like who brought the most to their team or did the most, type thing for that year. So I don't know. Patty Kaz is really hard sometimes because you have the WCHA, which is such a powerhouse, and then you have to kind of try to balance it with everybody else. Because at the same time last year, I kind of had that crisis of like, well, I don't want to just not or only vote for WCHA all the time, because then it's like, well, could somebody else never win it then if everyone only voted for like WCHA players? It's kind of a dilemma sometimes of that type of thing.
Did you also vote for Mr. Hockey then as well in the past?
Yeah, I voted for that, but I think that's a way huger pool. I think a lot of people vote for Mr. Hockey, so
Sure.
that's I think much less of a selective thing. I think they have a way larger group of people that vote for that, so that's less. But people vote so differently on that too, because I'll hear podcasts and I'm like, oh, I did not vote that way, but I'm glad you feel that way. Because I try to, I don't know. I'm a very like currently, how much did they bring to their team? Are they kind of like the MVP? I feel like that's more of how I would vote for most awards, unless it's specifically something else. But
You sound like
it's tough.
you're a hockey fan that would appreciate the CRUD metric, which is
yeah.
cutting edge college hockey metric that analyzes the player's value relative to their team. So it's close to MVP, but
Yeah.
another ditch that we're running into right
Izzy-
when we're leaving.
the Izzy Daniel thing was interesting too, because honestly, I think last year for me, and I think for a lot of the people that ended up doing it, I think it was a lot of like, well, I can't really put one of these Wisconsin players over the other one.
How did you vote this
So-
year, if you don't mind divulging
Yeah, this
your
year
vote?
I did vote Casey O'Brien won, so
So you were 2
I-
for 2 in your
yeah.
2 years on the committee. You nailed it both years.
because I'm pretty transparent about who I vote for. People ask, I'm not really somebody who wants to be like I'm gonna be not tell you who I voted for if people like want to know. But Casey O'Brien, yeah, was definitely my one. But I wasn't really surprised the other Wisconsin people got in there. I did think that Abby Murphy had a shot of making it in there, but I know she's just so polarizing that it's hard. Like some coaches think she's the best, and other coaches are like, I hate her and I will not vote for
She's
her.
a
I think
perfectly uncontroversial player.
like nobody said like I hate her in our discussions, obviously, but like you can just tell she's
Brad
a very
Frost certainly didn't during his
polarizing,
during the Zoom call. I'm sure because he was on the
very
committee.
polarizing person. So I think that's really hard to be like, well, she is like clearly one of the best players there is, but a little controversial. So I feel like that was kind of the thing this year. I was like, I don't know, leading up to when they would reveal the top 3, I was kind of like, well, I don't know. We'll see if she ends up cracking the top 3 because I think she's talented enough to win it, but
She's got to be on the short
is.
list for if she's
Yeah.
coming back. Now
It's tough.
she'll be back with the Gophers. I'm sure she's gonna be on that short list.
Because she is like clearly one of the best players in women's hockey, but
And I hate
there's
it.
a lot of yeah. Obviously, being a controversial player, it's tough when you take a lot of penalties and dive a lot. So,
I called her a diver in front of the scratches at when they
yeah.
played St. Cloud State.
and she has
So-
a lot of pretty big, obnoxious sellies. So you know, she's
She's a heel.
interesting.
You know, it's
So I didn't know
sports
if she
needs
was going to
heels.
crack the top
They
3
need
or not.
heels.
I wouldn't be
Heels are
surprised
decent.
if she was close to cracking the top 3 just because she's so good. But I think so many of us, well, I don't know if they think the same as I do, but it's like, I don't know. It's so tough because she's so good, but it's like, I don't know. Tough.
If we got,
tough
I mean,
to do
I'm
that,
in off season mode. I can't even think. Edwards and Harvey are coming back. They've still got eligibility.
Yeah, I mean, it's
and
so
they were
hard to
finalists.
pick between all of them too, with like Sims, Harvey, Edwards, O'Brien. It was like
Sims
you
is
have-
back too.
You have 4 so talented players. It's like, okay, well, Wisconsin, I didn't know if that was going to hurt their players either this year. Of like, you have 4 very, very capable players in the top 10. Like, who are you going to pick? Like, they're all so good in their own way. So I think a lot of people just were like, well, O'Brien, you know, has kind of been the leading scorer type person and pretty well-rounded type thing. So
It was,
I don't know. Pros and
Yeah.
cons to the voting every year, and yeah, it's interesting.
No,
But I will
it's-
say I don't have any shade to Izzy Daniel last year because otherwise I would not have known to put as one because in my opinion I was like, I don't know who else comes after that. So sometimes some schools will have 2 players that I think are equal and I can't put one over the other. So
Sure.
can be a little tough, but yeah. And then I did O'Brien this year, so glad at least who I voted for, even if the end result might be controversial to some people, at least then hopefully the other people thought similarly to me.
Enough people did.
Just
So
good,
I mean, that's
good to know
yeah.
that I'm not like voting for somebody that wasn't even close or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, it's like who the hell voted on this list? Not invited them
Yeah.
back.
Yeah, exactly. So
So-
I won't be on the committee next year because it's just 2-year terms for media.
Okay.
I think it's 3 years for coaches, so they get like kind of fresh people rotated in. So I will not be on it next year because I don't think I can repeat, back to back, obviously. But
Sure.
it was very
That
interesting.
Would defeat, it would defeat the purpose. But that's that was cool to find out, and congratulations for being part of that. And maybe you'll
For
get the call in
sure.
the future.
For sure.
So
Yeah.
all right, just about to wrap up. I'm gonna go through quickly a couple of questions that came through on Blue Sky, obviously from Dan Jacobson. Did I secure my Switch 2 pre-order? No, I didn't actually, because I don't have it's just really Mario Kart World coming out, and if I don't have a Metroid release date, I don't really care. So I will get it before Metroid Prime 4 comes out, though. Will the Wolves inevitably lose? I'm riding this basketball train, so I'm going for it. You guys got a Wolves prediction? Wolves in 5. That's what I'm saying.
Sure. Love it.
As someone who really likes the streak that Minnesota pro sports teams are on, the men's sports teams at least, I would hate to think that they're going to win the series. I feel better about their chances this year than it did last year, even when they had home court against Dallas. Something about, I feel like they've got the mojo, and it's going to be them and the Knicks, I think, in the finals. So
a lot of storylines.
I will put the curse of death on them and say Wolves in 6.
Andrew, how are you feeling about the Twins, their hot streak that they've had?
Not good. I was loving the first 30 games, but pass. Next 13, question.
13 game winning streak just came to an end. And then an actual hockey question, Eric. Frustrations with SCSU not having the full schedule out yet. It's hampering my trip planning. I find that
I sent it to him on Center Ice View.
Well, I'm more annoyed about the Cactus Cup because
that's probably the question mark. Yeah,
we get these leaks about, we think Boston University's in it, but I feel like that's been shot down by some folks. We know Mankato's in it. I mean, St. Cloud hasn't officially released, the school hasn't officially released their schedules. I believe they're in it. And then there's also reports that Lowell is involved in it too, but they have not, the Cactus Cup organizers have not released the field yet. That's the one that I'll go to that because it's within driving distance for me, but I'm just curious as far as who the teams are. And that it would be weird if it was St. Cloud and Mankato, 2 Minnesota teams, but then 2 Hockey East teams. Like, you'd think if you're going to hook up with Mankato, you wouldn't hook up in the first round if there's 2 Hockey East teams playing in the other game. So I'm more curious about that. It sounds like Vermont and Anchorage at a lot of home games in October for the Huskies. Again, nothing has been made official by the school yet for the non-conference, but I'm looking at the schedule, and Bemidji has released their schedule. I think I'm going to make that Bemidji series. I'm going to travel back to that because I've never actually been up to Bemidji for hockey games, so I could scratch that off my list. But I would like to do some more planning as far as who's involved in that Cactus Cup, and just 100% to confirm that St. Cloud is going to be in that. Arizona State, they play down there in February, so I would assume that there's going to be some Husky fans making that trip. Good time of year to get out of St. Cloud, I think. Come down to my state for a weekend. So, yeah, the conference slate is intriguing. It's really not surprising, but at least we get dates and we can do a little bit of planning. But I'm with Eric. I just dump the whole thing. Just bring it on.
Yeah, we did get the conference schedule was released, and we'll probably go in more in depth that.
Once the whole thing's released, then we can fully digest it.
But if I remember correctly, were we the odd man? Were the odd team out? We had the last weekend off.
Oh yeah, we've got the bye before the playoffs, which I'm sure Larson likes that. That's good to have a rest before the playoffs. Rest up.
So. Perfect. Well, thank you, Sydney, for enduring this late hour as well, and this 2-hour marathon session.
This one was a short one for us.
This was a short one for us, so believe it or not.
We got off easy.
Obviously, where can they find you?
Yeah, for sure. My current thing is Clean Sheet Hockey, which is super easy. It's cleansheethockey.com. Got a lot of good stuff on there. Go check it out. Otherwise, I'm doing some stuff randomly for Youth Hockey Hub, but it's the off season, so not as much. And hopefully I'll have some good career news here coming up as well that I can't say yet, but hopefully in the next few weeks. So staying busy and mostly Clean Sheet, or on Twitter at CleanSheetHKY. So easy to find.
Perfect. Sounds good. Make sure you send her a donation too. Right there, donation right at the bottom of the Clean Sheet Hockey. So thank you so much for coming out. And then, as always, that about does it for this episode. I'm Weldy at More Clappers, MOAR, More Clappers. Andrew?
It's Andrew, and I can never remember. At Andrew, SCSU, HHP on the X machine.
Is this still Mosey for Hobie?
It is, and my Twitter has been a ghost town of late. It's the off season, folks. I've moved on. My brain moves on to other interests in the summer.
I mean, you had 3 yellow legal pad sheets of.
Yes, it was a very unproductive day at work today, and I was glad for that because I got to do some research for this show.
Perfect. Those are the best days. And until next time, go Huskies. Woo!
Woo!